between the Kremlin and the Wagner Group comes after the former accused the group's chief of armed rebellion. While Russia's prosecutor general said that he was under investigation for armed rebellion, the Wagner mercenary group chief had accused the Russian military leadership of launching deadly missile strikes on his men and vowed to punish them for the same. Media reports suggest Prigozhin has also urged Russians to join his forces and punish the military leadership. The 62-year-old Yevgeny Prigozhin said his Wagner fighters had crossed the border from Ukraine into Russia, entering the city of Rostov on Don, adding his men would destroy anyone who stood in their way. The local governor, meanwhile, urged citizens there to keep calm and to stay indoors. The Wagner Group is a private army of mercenaries that has been fighting alongside the regular Russian army in Ukraine since the war broke out on February 24 last year. Prigozhin had launched a vocal criticism of Russia's military leadership in the recent times. Experts are now suggesting that the rising tensions between Russia and the Wagner Group would affect the outcomes of the more than a year-long Ukraine war. Well, mutiny against Putin and also an armed rebellion that is taking place, and this time by the private group of Wagner and its mercenary army. The Wagner Group, headed by Yevgeny Prigozhin, has moved his forces from Ukraine. It is being estimated that roughly 25,000 mercenaries have pledged loyalty to him, and the Wagner Group is said to have gone on a march towards Moscow, and the intention for it is said to be to punish the Russian military top brass for the decisions taken, and they have also said that they would march all the way, and it's not a rebellion but a sense of justice to be restored to them. This could affect the outcome of the year-long Ukraine war that has been going on. Well, the Russian Wagner Group has been known to be a very well-trained mercenary group and have also taken part in one of the bloodiest campaigns that the Russians had launched in Ukraine. They have retaken the city of Bakhmut, and this was the place where the Russian soldiers, the regular soldiers, had been tied down by a stiff Ukrainian resident, and this has resulted in the Wagner Group entering to break the Ukrainian resistance in Bakhmut, and they were successfully able to do it, though it was said to be a very bloody campaign that took place. Meanwhile, reports are coming in, and there are unconfirmed social media posts also put in place where Wagner Group's vehicles were seen surrounding the Ministry of Defense's building in the southern part of Russia, where the building is said to have been the cornerstone of planning for the Ukrainian invasion. And therefore, right now, what we see is that there is an effort on the part of the Russians themselves to ensure that this particular rebellion that has already happened is taken care of immediately, as it is threatening the outcome of the Ukrainian war and Russia's efforts to end the war as this impasse continues.
Я призываю остановиться.
I urge you to stop. The enemy is just waiting for the internal political situation to worsen in our country. It is unacceptable to play into the hands of enemy in these difficult times for the country. Before it is too late, it is necessary and it is needed to obey the will and order of the popularly elected President of the Russian Federation. Stop the columns, return them to their permanent deployment points and concentration areas.
Well, we are joined in by Colonel Shivdan Singh, a retired and a defense expert. Colonel, how do you see this rebellion that is emerging in Russia? We have seen this impasse for almost a year. The Russians have been facing this huge resistance from the Ukrainians. Technically, it is a status quo situation after 6 months of their advance. But then this internal rebellion, how do you think would affect the outcome of the Ukrainian war if this rebellion is going to succeed or not succeed?
You see, right from beginning, the Russian decision to attack Ukraine was not very fair decision, because Putin was trying to impose his will on Ukraine not to join NATO, whereas Ukraine is an independent country. But Putin had an imaginary feeling that if Ukraine joins NATO, then NATO forces will come to the borders of Russia and try to threaten Russia, which is not a very accurate calculation, and it was an imaginary fear which Putin had, and it was only for dominating the area that Putin was not letting Ukraine join NATO. So that's why this war was started, whereas majority of Russians did not like it. And you know, in Russian army, the troops who were retired, they were called back reservists, they were made to fight on the borders. At the same time, certain troops are, by order, they have been made to join Russian army. So these kind of troops, they are not willing to fight. And this demand in Russian army has been long outstanding, that their soldiers were the reservist soldiers especially, who were called from their houses after retirement. They were not very willing to fight. That's why so far Russia has not been able to get any decisive victory against Ukraine, whereas Ukraine is a very small country. If all the troops or all the Russian army was willingly fighting against Ukraine, then by now Ukraine have been won 10 times. So I am fully with this revolution which is going on in Russia, that they are demanding that this war is unfair war and this war should be stopped, and at the earliest it should come to a conclusion.
Well, Colonel, one thing that I have, when you raised the issue about saying that when it is about NATO footprint come, it's a wrong decision that they had taken. Now, the issue over here is NATO was founded to contain Russia, or the then Soviet Russia that existed, and also its Warsaw Pact countries. But NATO has been slowly reaching the doorsteps of Russia. And why do you think that Putin shouldn't, in fact, challenge that? Because Ukraine has been in Russian ambit. The elections, of course, in which Zelensky came in was also said to be not from a Western perspective, but from a lot of perspective from the Eastern Europe, they think that it was not fair, and that you had an existing president who was made to go, and then you had elections held and Zelensky coming into power. But so it is not technically democracy that happened over there. And when a country that feels threatened with a NATO, which in fact the entire NATO is geared to ensure that they contain Russia from moving into the plains of Europe if there was an invasion, and that is the same theory that is there. So why should Russia not fear when it comes to the war with Ukraine?
You see, I agree that Russia should have feared, but at the same time, they should have resolved the issue by talks. And since long, all world leaders, prominent leaders are only telling that they should sit across the table and they should have discussed it out. Because on such issues, war cannot find a solution. Now Zelensky has roused his nation that their integrity, their sovereignty is being threatened by Russia, so all people should rise. Imagine how much loss of the humanity is taking place in Ukraine. A lot of multi-story buildings are being collapsed, their nuclear plants are being destroyed, their railway system is being destroyed, their power system is this loss of whole humanity. So this way, my views, I agree Russia had a point in persuading the Ukraine not to join NATO, and Ukraine should have also not made an effort to join NATO. It was quite an antagonizing factor for Russia. But at the same time, my submission, my advice would have been that it should have been discussed across the table, and it should have been told that when they were Soviet sunk, that time the birth of NATO was only because to threaten Soviet sunk. So these ideas should have been explained to Ukraine very well, and then if they had not agreeing, then the task should have been taken like this. So,
Colonel, coming to the present situation, I mean, we are looking also into that present situation. How do you think, because you have Putin who's supposed to deal with the war on one side, and then they have an internal rebellion that is happening right now, and the Wagner Group is is a mercenary group that has been used effectively by Russia. It has been its second sword in this war, and it has been its second sword when it comes to its international relations as well. It has effectively used the Wagner Group quite well with these mercenaries. So they are a highly trained group that is on a warpath towards Moscow, especially against the generals who are there in the Defense Department taking those decisions. So right now, what is the kind of conundrum that you think Putin would be facing with this rebellion on one side and this impasse in the Ukraine war on the other side?
You see, nowadays there is something called proxy war. In proxy war, what enemy does is that he tries to disturb the fighting elements of opposite nation. Now, this way, this group who is raising the flag of rebellion against Putin, they have been motivated, they have been sort of brainwashed by the opposing nations, like complete NATO, complete America, all the countries who are supporting Ukraine. They have infiltrated their elements in this group, and they have sort of changed their thinking and made them rise against Putin. So this is the success of proxy war of NATO countries and America and Ukraine. So this is nothing new. Nowadays, this war, this tactics is being used everywhere. This is one aspect. Second aspect, this impasse which is going on between Ukraine and Russia. My suggestion is that, like our Prime Minister trying right from beginning, that they should come to talking table and leave everything behind. They should discuss this issue on talking table, and this concept that NATO was raised only to threaten Russia and contain Soviet Union. This issue should be discussed there and should be told to Ukraine that don't try to join NATO. Let it be like this only. And we are assuring you, Russia should tell Ukraine, we are assuring you that nobody can threaten you in future.
Well, one of the assurance that the Russians had given when the Soviet Union was breaking up was to denuclearize Ukraine. They had taken all the weapons back and said that Russia wouldn't, in fact, go ahead and threaten Ukraine in any way, and that since both of them have cultural as well as religious ties with each other, the Ukraine thought that would have been the case. But now it looks like with tactical nuclear weapons being moved to Belarus is the latest that we hear. Ukraine seems to be at that receiving end, saying that they should have technically kept those nuclear weapons with them. In the context of this, how do you see the nuclear danger in this conflict rising when it comes to a rebellion on one side as well as the possible usage of nuclear weapons on the other? Because when you have an internal rebellion like this, it's a pressure that is happening, and therefore Putin might be forced to have some kind of breakthrough on the other side of the war front. So how do you see the possibility of use of tactical nuclear weapons if this rebellion succeeds in a large extent to reach Moscow, and at the same time trying to have some kind of a breakthrough on the Ukrainian front?
I can assure you in a broader way that in complete world, nuclear weapons will not be used by anybody, because everybody has seen the mass destruction which has taken place in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At the second time, the way the corona fear has affected the complete world, and China is feeling isolated because of corona spread. Same way, whosoever use nuclear weapon will be outcasted by a whole world. He will be economically, he will be in normal ways, he will be outcasted, and nobody will have any relation with that country. Because the existence of UNO is because of against nuclear weapon use only. So complete UN nations will rise against this nation whosoever use nuclear weapon. So not anywhere in the world nuclear weapon will be used. And same way, these are only a show business. This is only threatening. This is only sort of trying to put another nation in fear. Otherwise, nuclear weapons are not going to be used by anybody. In Russia cannot afford to use nuclear weapon because his interests lie with the other countries, economic interests, other interests. So the moment nuclear weapon is used by Russia, UNO will outcast Russia, and Russia will have no place in the world.
So now, with this rebellion, in fact, becoming quite an issue, this is Prigozhin who has not, interestingly, made statements against Putin. He has made statements against the military brass. So, do you think that the military brass are making a huge set of mistakes, especially the top Russian military brass is making a huge set of mistakes on the war front? That is why such rebellions are coming to the forefront.
Certainly, their military brass has made a lot of mistakes, even in fighting war also, in tactics also, how to use army, how to use various forces against Ukraine. That's why this war is prolonging so long. They are not very good command and control there. That's why this war has prolonged so much against such a small nation. And Russia used to be called as a superpower of the world, and still is superpower of the world. But not even able to tackle such a small country. It's certainly the weakness of their army. And as I told you, they have called the reservists to fight. These are all wrong planning by their army. And their generals at the most of the places, they are taking wrong decisions in attacking some place, in withdrawing from some place, and like this thing. So the lower troops, whosoever are under you, they keep observing senior officers. But the moment they find that they are not taking decisions rightly, they stand up against the decisions nowadays. It's a developed world, and everybody feels like raising his voice, and same thing has happened in Russia also.
Well, also when we talk about Prigozhin, the person who is in fact leading this kind of a rebellion with almost 25,000 soldiers, highly armed, and at the same time also facing Russian missile attacks, as he claims. Do you think he's also raised issues about how the soldiers are suffering and asked citizens to join him to teach a lesson to the military brass? Do you think this is a seed of a rebellion that could actually probably put an end to the long reigning power situation with regards to Putin? I mean, Putin's power could be curtailed once and for all with this rebellion.
Yes, if your defense forces are not acting properly, the final question is asked against the leader from the leadership only. That what kind of command and control you have ensured in your defense forces. It is Putin who has put these generals in their place. So if his army is facing a rebellion like this, and if it is sort of there in such an organized way that 20,000 troops, 20,000 rebellion are there against army, is a big number, and certainly it is causing a lot of disturbance in the nation and in the defense forces. And this all failure of command and control, and that right from beginning, political as well defense command and control. So certainly position of Putin has been threatened, and that's why Putin is not in such a strong position, and it has given a lot of morale boosting to Ukraine also.
So, morale boosting with Ukraine. Now, what are the options between for the Russian top establishment that we see right now? Not much, I think, as of now, because if they do succeed, and what they are claiming is that there is no resistance being offered by the soldiers who are already there within Russia. So, if that was the case, then what do you think would be the case if these people or the rebels have reached the Moscow pit? I'm asking a speculative question, but if they do reach Moscow's suburbs, what could be the options for Putin?
You see, now if they reach outskirts of Moscow, then they are going to affect the complete government working, and nations complete this thing morale will go down. Like so far, Russian army has not been able to sort of control the Ukrainian government system, and that's why Ukraine is free to fight against Russia. If these rebellions reach Moscow outskirts, then they will certainly gherav the complete Moscow. And this will give a wrong message to everybody, to their army, to the Ukraine, to their leadership, and leadership will have no face to show their nation that we are really a popular leader and we are there to sort of lead the nation. So if these people reach outskirts of Moscow, then it will be a very, very bad scene for the Russia.
Colonel, one thing that I would like to do, why is it that we have these private armies being used by countries that have been, it's not that, you have the Blackstone Group when it comes to the United States, you have the Wagner Group when it comes to Russia, the Turkish military and the Turkish leadership also have their own private mercenaries. Why have mercenary groups now suddenly being used by nation states? Normally, the armed forces of the country, you have an official army or, an official arms forces group is what most of the countries used for force projection. But why mercenary groups these days?
You see, in developed countries like America, Russia, and all these Western countries, all the people, that kind of spirit is not there which was prevailing Second World War, that we have to fight for the nation. The people have become individualistic. The people have become more financial minded, economic minded people have become. Nobody has got this kind of spirit that we should stand up for the nation and sacrifice ourselves to the nation. That feeling is not there. That's why so far, even neither America nor Russia or any bigger country has achieved conclusive victory anywhere in the world. You see, in America, from Afghanistan, they had to withdraw. They have to withdraw from Iraq. They had to withdraw from Vietnam. Why? Because their troops know that our country is not fighting for their own country. It is fighting somewhere else to show influence of their country to other countries. So it's futile to unnecessarily sacrifice yourself. So that's why when their own army is not willing to fight and they do not have sort of solid force, they try to invite these mercenaries who are available money. So this is the reason, because these nations are not having very spirited armies.
Well, thank you, Colonel Shivdan, for in fact joining News9 and giving us insights about what this rebellion could be for Putin as well as for Russia in the long-standing Russia-Ukraine war. Let us now listen into what 62-year-old Yevgeny Prigozhin had to say when it came to his Wagner fighters going in for an open rebellion against Putin and the Russian forces.
The leadership of the Defense Ministry rigorously deceives the President, and the President receives those reports that do not correspond to reality in any way. There are two agendas. One is on the ground and the other is on the President's desk. And we listen all day long about 60 destroyed Leopards, about 3,000 destroyed enemy soldiers. I asked the commanders on the ground why we do not give the number of our soldiers who were killed and wounded. I was told that nobody at the top is interested in it. There is a task that must be accomplished, and we will calculate how many will die later after the war. No one was interested by what efforts victory would be achieved. And at the time when we arrived, it was already impossible to talk about victory. Relatives of various soldiers unrelated to the Wagner private military company write me every day and ask questions. Guys who went to the Russian Defense Ministry. The number of missing persons that we can see is just impossible. They were thrown away like meat because there was no possibility to take on the territory. It is hidden until now. The Defense Ministry tries to deceive the public, the President, and tell a story that there was a crazy aggression from the Ukrainian side and that they were going with the NATO alliance to attack us. Therefore, the so-called special operation of the 24th of February was started for the reasons. The war was necessary for a bunch of bastards to triumph and promote themselves, showing what a strong army it was. The oligarchs needed the war. It was needed by the clan that actually controls Russia today. This clan gets everything it can. If foreign businesses are close to this clan, then the state immediately divides domestic businesses and gives it to them. Everything that happened are holy war with those who offend the Russian people, those who are trying to humiliate them. has turned into racketeering, or rather into financial impropriety, raised to the rank of law, to the rank of national ideology.
Well, that was the head of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is now leading a 25,000-strong mercenary group towards Moscow. In what he is saying, would there be a punishment of the generals who took the wrong decisions, and that the truth should be coming out on what is happening on the Ukrainian front? Well, these are the visuals coming in from the probable mutiny by the Wagner Group. We leave you with these visuals as another front opens in the Ukraine war. Stay tuned to News 9.
इंजीनियरिंग कर रहे हैं क्योंकि सभी लोग कर रहे हैं.
Coaching is now starting from grade 3, 4, 5, 6.
कोटा जाने वाली बीच राह में आधे टेस्ट देके हैं सिलेक्शन की चाह में.
ऑल इंडिया का बच्चा कोटा जाता है.
This rat race is for rats, not for humans. So why should we even be a part of it?
The Rat Race. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now. BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection.